He joins me in the studio now. Tony Smith, welcome to Capitol Hill.
Thanks, Lyndall. Good to be here.
As part of the hearings, Clive Palmer from the Palmer United Party was scheduled to appear. He didn't. Would you like him to give some evidence before the committee?
Well, the history on this is important, Lyndall. We didn't request Mr Palmer appear. He made a submission earlier on in the year and he gave a speech at the National Press Club, but from our perspective there wasn't anything new we needed to learn. Mr Palmer himself requested to appear. He was offered some dates at hearings in Sydney and in Adelaide, and ultimately confirmed that he wanted to appear. His office confirmed that in writing with us, and it was locked in a couple of weeks ago. So it was a surprise to us that he didn't appear on the day. But from our perspective, we just wanted to absolutely make clear he made the request. We were happy to accommodate him. In the end, that request has been unreservedly withdrawn.
Now, the acting electoral commissioner this morning told the hearing the commission's got a long way to go. Is it, though, starting on the right foot?
I think Mr Rogers' candour, his level of detail is to be commended. I think the leadership is on the right track, but Lyndall, it's a long track. It really is a long track, because what the West Australian lost votes debacle uncovered was a smorgasbord of vulnerabilities and failings that certainly go beyond Western Australia.
Is it the ultimate aim to make sure the public can absolutely have trust in the results that the Electoral Commission provides from each election?
You'll always have mistakes, and all of us on the committee accept that, but where you've got processes in place that aren't followed, and you've got errors that just should never occur in an election. Mr Rogers has rightly acknowledged that, and not only has he dealt with the issues out of the Kelty inquiry, I think this morning what he really said to the committee was he is stress testing every aspect of the organisation and its administration.
He also said, with everything that's going on, with all the audits and inquiries and responses the Electoral Commission is making, the Commission will not be in a position to even trial on any large-scale electronic voting in Australia by the time of the next election. From your perspective, is electronic voting a priority, or is it an idea that still has substantial question marks over it?
We've taken a lot of evidence on it, and it's one of those things in the public that's very popular. When it comes to its implementation, there are varying views. One about how you'd adapt our voting system to it. Most people think of electronic voting in terms of the ease of voting over the internet, and that's something that's quite rare. But the logistics involved, Mr Rogers pointed out this morning.
And also the chance of having someone standing over your shoulder directing you to vote if you're doing it on the internet from the privacy of your own home.
And all of these things need to be considered. Also, the risks around security of votes. I mean, you've got risks with any system. So we're systematically looking at that. I mean, the thing I would say is it's worth dispelling any notion that at the next election there's going to be any widespread electronic voting. In a logistics sense, I think he made the obvious point that there are long lead times if you want to do this as safely as possible. Now,
finally, your committee made interim recommendations on changes to Senate voting in the wake of the preference gaming at the last election. We haven't seen any legislation. Would you like to see that through Parliament before the next election?
Oh, certainly we want to see change before the next election. I mean, one of the reasons we worked so hard to produce what was a unanimous report early was to give time for consideration of that, and that's why we produced the report on the Friday before the budget. Lyndall, I never thought it would take priority over the budget. I've worked on budgets in another capacity before, and the appropriation bills and abolishing the carbon tax and the like. So it's not urgent this week or even next month, but in good time before the next election, we think those reforms are important, because we've reached the point now where the Senate ballot paper in states like New South Wales and Victoria, it's the maximum printable width. It can't get any bigger, and they're handing out magnifying sheets. It's a nonsense, and it was the other big issue that left voters bewildered after the last election.
Is it actually in part, is there any sense that it's a failure of the major parties to actually get people to join them? They feel like there's not a home for them, so they flock to, or people start their own parties, or they consider voting for smaller parties.
That wasn't an issue that drove us. It really wasn't. What's driven this is the change in Senate voting about 30 years ago, and the ease in registering a party, and the fact that to vote above the line, which 95% of people do, just to put one for a party, means you forfeit your preferences to group voting tickets and you no longer control them. So what we're wanting to do is not restore power to political parties, restore power to the voter, to say you preference to the extent you wish, with optional preferential voting. You can go 1, 1, 2, 3, and you know exactly who you're preferencing, and you're not forfeiting it to group voting tickets.
I'll have to leave it there, Tony Smith. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Linda.